The banks you use nowadays, the system you use, even the accounting and the way they do balance sheet, the T accounting, assets, liabilities, was invented by Italians during the Renaissance time. 1400, 1500. In Florence. That's the banking system as we use it nowadays. The word itself, bookkeeping, you know, bookkeeping, for recording transactions and so on, was invented by Italians. And it comes from that time. Okay, now, why they invented banks at that time? Well, the purpose were basically two. One, protect savings. So, instead of keeping my money at home, that was highly unsafe, or going around with all the money with me, so I could have a place, a safe place, where to store that money. I was storing the money, I was getting a receipt with an interest rate paid on it, because they were taking it in custody, they were paying me an interest, and the second purpose of the bank was lending. They were taking that money and lending it out for business ventures. They invented the system. Now, the key thing is that in this paper, they discuss about other things, not just this part of the banking sector. Because what has been changed in the last 15, 20 years in the banking sector is that now banks don't do just this, taking care of savings and lending, the lending cycle. They do also other activities. They trade. So, every bank now is basically made of two parts. The retail lending saving part and the trading part. The trading part trades financial assets, financial securities, CDOs, other complex instruments, futures, forward contract, bonds, blah, 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 and so on and so on. They trade, they buy and sell them. What is the main characteristic now of these two phases? One, the type of business model here is a long-term relationship model. What does it mean? It means that the value created here, in this side, comes out from the multiple interaction with the same customer. Repetition of the interaction between the firm and the consumer. So far so good? For example, a classic example. You have a bank where all your family go, right? And you have a bank account there because your family has the bank account there. And because maybe the family of your family had the bank account there. And before, the family of the family of the family had the bank account there, and so on. There is a long history of trust. So you go to that bank because you trust them. You consider them reliable. Look at what we do normally here. You relocate into a new country. What do you do when you choose a bank? Well, normally you do ask, normally people ask to friends, some friends, which bank do you have? Is that a good bank? Is that a reliable bank? Is a bank that actually has a good customer service, blah, 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 and so on. Why you do that? Well, you are searching for trust. Why? Because it's a type of business which is based on multiple small interactions. You're going to go there multiple times. Your salary is going to go there, and so on and so on. You want to be sure that the long-term relationship is going to be a good one. You don't change a bank every month. You don't do that. Well, I hope so. You don't do that, right? So, that's one side of the business. That's the other side of the business, though, the trading. Trading is characterized by what? Well, trading is characterized by short-term relationship because most of the time it's one-off, buying and selling. where you focus on what? On the highest possible return. You don't care if this is going to happen again. I want to exploit the opportunity at the moment. There is a good opportunity, I'll buy, I'll sell. That's it. This is this one. Short-term horizon, long-term horizon. You see? Two faces, two souls are living in the same institution. Every bank is like this, including the so-called commercial banks. Commercial banks, retail banks, have this part which is larger than this one. Investment banks has this part that is larger than this one. That's the difference between the two in terms of activities. Do you understand the problem? Does it make sense? Okay, now, what they are saying is that in the paper they are saying that unless we understand what is the relationship, the economic relationship between these two, how capitals move here for their activities, we cannot have an optimal policy. That's the meaning of the paper. Now, obviously, there is one issue here. And the issue is, that's what is pointing out the paper, is this side of the business normally brings returns which are pretty low, 5-6%. This side of the business brings high level of returns, 20-30%.
So in the retail, the risk is lower?
Yes.
And by how much?
Well, risk is low normally. This is just like symbolic numbers. It can be 7, it can be 4, it can be, but it's a very small number, this one. And the risk is low. There is low level of risk in this type of investment. In this one, there is higher risk, but higher level of return. Okay? The trading side. Now, the issue is that the bank, as every organization, has shareholders, right? And shareholders are interested in what? Higher returns. That's what they want, right? So obviously the bank will try to shift most of the capital from this one to this one. It's obvious, because you want to please your shareholder. To make them happy, you need to trade more. That's exactly the results of the research. Banks trade too much because it's more profitable. But obviously, because this is higher level of risk, bank trading is too risky then. You see, that's the issue. Does it make sense, the whole thing? That's basically in a very small picture, but what's going on in the paper. There is another issue here that has to do with the second question, the economic part of it. Why? Because this one is not directly attached to the real economy. This one has to do with financial assets. You trade CDOs, you trade financial products, paper, you trade paper. What is the money that is going into the economy? This one. The real economy is fed by lending, the lending cycle, loans, right? That's where the money goes in the real economy. This one, it behaves depending on how the real economy goes. Now, if I take away capital from this part and I put it here, I have less money that can go here. Right? So, I reduce the amount of money available to the real economy. What they claim is that you increase the risk and you drain the economy from real money. By doing this in the long run, you will have always a recurrent crisis.
What is written about optimal policy?
It's a tension. There is a tension between the two. This one is long, this short-term, long-term. Profit-oriented, risk-oriented. So it's different. Does it make sense, the whole thing? La la. That's the meaning of the old paper, basically. Okay? So, now, we need to understand one more thing, which is actually included there, in the part below. Given the implication for systemic risk, trading by banks has received significant regulatory attention. What is this systemic risk? Did you copy this? The whole thing? Yeah? Yeah?
Yes, one.
Yeah, it's okay. Right, it's okay. It's okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, now, what is this risk we are talking about now? Here we go. Systemic risk. Okay. Now, systemic risk, not systematic risk. Please don't write that, otherwise I get very nervous. Systemic, because systematic is another thing. Systemic risk has a long story in the banking sector, which is normally considered in two different parts of this story. Before the 2007-2008 crisis and after. After the last crisis, we had to change the concept of systemic risk. Because it was so bad that we realized that we don't understand it. So we had to change it. Okay? Now, systemic risk before. What is the old version, the old-fashioned definition of systemic risk? The old-fashioned definition of systemic risk is that basically defined as the probability of the contagion effect generating cascades of defaults. What does it mean? It's very simple. Take three banks. Three banks, right? A, B, C. And they are connected by certain activities. If I take this definition, basically I'm doing this. I calculate the probability that if this one defaults, so it means go bankrupt, basically, disappear from the system. I calculate the probability that if this one disappears, this one will disappear too, and this one will disappear too. Because they are interconnected by activities. Banks. Okay? So, the risk in terms of systemic risk was calculated as the probability that B fails if A fails. What's the probability that C fails if A and B are failing? Put it in a very simple example. What is the probability that Česká spořitelna fail if Komerční banka fail? Imagine that tomorrow Komerční banka closed down for some reason. Bad investment, whatever. Can't pay creditors. So, what is the probability? So it means that if you have an account there, you lose all your money, right? So, if this happens, what's the probability that Česká spořitelna is going to basically be defaulting, like means fails all? That's what systemic risk was assessing how the failure of one was causing the cascade effect. Cascade effect means like domino effect. The contagion is the domino effect. One fail, the other will fail, you know. And always we thought that the larger is the one failing, and the more will be dramatic consequences in terms of the domino run. Let's say you have a bigger tree, will put down more, the domino effect. Okay, that's the idea. That was the old kind of concept. So far, so good? Okay? Now, after 2008, we understood that was very naive thinking about that. Actually, there are more factors that play a role in defining systemic risk. Contagion is one of them, this one. But there are other two important ones. The first one is called common shocks. What does this variable represent? We learned in the financial crisis that banks can fail not because of domino effect, but simultaneously at the same time. Not one after another, A causes B failing, but they can blow up at the same time. Poof, poof, at the same time. They disappear, both at the same time, simultaneously. I tell you later why. That's common shock. Common shock means, given a banking system, multiple banks, financial institutions, fail simultaneously at the same time. Okay? You have a network of several banks. We always thought before that one fails, then causes the others to fail. So one disappears, then this one will disappear, this one will cause this one disappear, and this one disappear, and so on and so on. No, we learned that actually we can have an even worse situation. They can disappear all at the same time, fail all together. Second important factor here, informational spillovers. We learned that when one financial institution is failing, the refinancing cost of the others is higher. Therefore, the risk is higher. Let me explain with a very simple example. So, this one is in trouble. This one is in trouble. Okay? $100 million under. Okay? So, what does it do? Campaign failed. Gone. Okay? Now, this one is in trouble too. Is 13 million under. Okay? So this one actually, because of this one failed, get affected and is 30 million under, right? So because of this failure here. For example, imagine that this one had the assets of this one. Lost, gone, 30 million losses. Good. This one then goes to the other one and say, hey, please, can I borrow 30 million to cover my losses? Because I'm under, because of the losses I have here. And C says, oh, you are in trouble, so you had those assets. I'll charge you 5% plus, more than the actual cost. Why? Because for me it's risky, because it means that those assets were not good. So they charge more, but then imagine that this happened in a sequence. You have a bank B. This one, if this one happened to this, is because of the previous one, is going to charge 7 plus, because it's riskier, right? But what all this mechanism does, increase the overall risk of failure. Because can you imagine at the end of the chain, it's going to be very, very high interest. So it means that you make actually very possible that they're not going to pay. It means that you are increasing the systemic risk because you are increasing the possibility of failure. Does that make sense? That's called informational spillover, which is the spillover. It's written like this. The news that a financial institution in trouble raised the cost of capital for refinancing the others, and as a domino effect again. So they're going to ask more and more, and the more the chain is longer, and the more they will charge, and the more they will charge, and the more this will go up.
So if B borrows from C,
Yes.
then B has to pay 5% more, let's say.
Yes.
But then C will.
When C will borrow, because of the previous fact, D will charge C 7% more, and so on and so on.
But then it's a never-ending.
Exactly. The point is, no, it's ending because thanks God the number of banks is finite, right? So it's not infinite. But still, it raises enormously the cost of capital for refinancing. So it means that they raise the bar of the cost of money for covering losses. Oh, you have to pay that debt, I'll charge you more. Oh, because of those assets, I'll charge you even more and more. Because they know that at the origin you have toxic asset. Toxic asset means asset that you cannot convert anymore in cash. An asset is considered to be toxic in finance when you have the paper, but you can't claim the money back. CDOs. Because there is no collateral attached to it anymore. So it's worth 100 million here, but nothing in reality. That's a toxic asset.
So CDO is a toxic asset.
Was. And yeah, but not the CDO itself. The CDO became a toxic asset because of the subprime mortgages. Too many. CDOs during the financial crisis became toxic assets. Plenty of it. Simply because people couldn't pay the mortgages, right? The installment for mortgages. They stopped paying. Okay, does it make sense, the whole thing? That's the whole paper about. Now, that's what it's about the paper. It's all about these two things. How, now, this beast that has these two faces is connected to this. Now, the claim in the paper, what they prove is that this one, with respect to a bank designed in that way, increases a lot if you increase trading. Does it make sense?
There is a higher risk. The bank will go.
Yes. Systemic risk goes up because, and is going up, and keeps going up, because banks keep trading too much. That's the idea. That's the idea of the paper, and that's what they prove in the paper. Okay? So, and they suggest some policies, what to do with that. Okay? So, next part to focus on the analysis. If you go on page 4, you have this analysis there. The one on page 4 is what I did here on the board. Exactly what it is. In a simplified version, but that's what it is. Okay? Now, the important thing you should look at is the page 5 policy design here. And read what they suggest. Which activities to restrict? Do you see there? The study suggests that risks are posed by transaction-based trading, transaction-based activities of banks. This offers two implications. Restriction might need to cover more than proprietary trading. You see, that's your policy suggestion. You see, we make a suggestion. Let's go back to question number 3. Explain what other policies, if any, might be needed. You see there? So what a policy we need? Well, we need a policy which is reinforcing the Volcker rule that implies only no proprietary trading and restrict trading as a whole. That's our new policy we are designing now, based on the findings. So the policy we need is an extension of the Volcker rule in terms of trading activity. And in particular, we can suggest what? Why? Well, for example, other transactional activities, we focus on the trading, right? So other transactional activities such as buying and holding securitized debt, CDOs, this kind of stuff and so on, pose similar threats. You can search online for the case study, Washington Mutual Fund. Look for that one, and you will discover why it's important to restrict trading. Notice one thing, that the policy, though, there is little justification for restricting customer-oriented investment banking activities, that side, such as underwriting and these kind of things. Do you know what is underwriting, right? No? The bank can be a guarantor of a business. So the bank, for example, there is a business, going there with a business plan, and is producing a loan for that business, right? So the bank is the underwriter, is the guarantor that that actually is a reliable business plan and will actually refinance, blah blah, and so on, these kind of things and so on, okay? The only issue we have there is that there is a kind of connection between the lending and the underwriting. So there is the bank who does the underwriting for the business. The bank A does the business. Let's imagine we have this situation. Nowadays, that's what's happening. So you have bank A and is the underwriter of the business X. And then after being the guarantor of this one, saying, I certify that this is a good project, blah blah, needs to be financed and so on and so on, the bank A is still the lender of the money. Obviously, this can be a perverse cycle. Why? Well, because of the interest of the bank in the type of business. Can even support type of activities that might be, in the end, not in the interest of the overall bank. Because of the people involved, right? How do you break this policy? What we do? Well, it's enough to have this situation. I have a bank A who is underwriting the business X, but there should be by regulation a bank B loaning. That trust bank A. In other words, I have a policy which is separating the lending and the underwriting. So the two activities should be done by a third party, independent one. That's a classic example of a policy you can propose. So, how do you write that? Well, empirical evidence for distinction between lending and underwriting. So, we can actually, for example, suggest that we can separate the lending and underwriting process. Next one, segregate or prohibit. Segregation as proposed by Vickers, which is the author of Vickers report, can discourage overly risky trading and is necessary first step. So, but the study suggests that even then, banks might still be able to allocate too much capital to their trading subsidiaries, leaving lending constraints. So it is important to protect capital and risk-bearing capacity of bank lending operation. So, another policy we can actually put in place. We can restrict trading, okay? We cap, basically, we put a cap on their trading capabilities with respect to their capital, okay? We say, for example, you have 100 capital there, you can trade only 25% of it. No more than that. Restriction. But they say also that because of this, normally what they do, if you do this, they will take a subsidiary, which is actually an external financial entity that is associated with them, and they will move the rest of the capital here and trade from there. Officially, they don't break the law. They comply with it because they have the 25% here. So imagine that this one has two subsidiaries which are attached to this one. So 35 goes here, and I don't know, 45 goes here. So, no, actually less, 40. So officially they don't break the law because the cap is here. Because the trading is done by rest. So what we need to do? We need to have a policy which is capping this one, right? But enforcing them to lend. So we say, no. Of this, you cap this 25% of the trading and you put 75% of it into lending. So it should be a double policy, which is restricting the trading capabilities, but at the same time is forcing them to lend a certain quantity of money. Alex, does it make sense? At the same time, the policy deals with the quantity of lending. Then, next one, trading is actually bad in total? No. Trading is important for banks because they can use trading for hedging risk, reducing risk. They can buy, for example, securities to have basically more secure investment. You have plenty of those. It depends what you trade. So, trading is not bad, but trading should be controlled and related to hedging risk, reducing risk. What we should avoid as a policy is large scale trading. We need to control the scale of trading. That's the overall thing. Does it make sense? Yeah? Does this help a bit in understanding what's going on? Or read the case study again, and then start to think about how to answer the question.
When is the due date?
The due date is the 30th of May, but we'll need to produce some draft, like global economics.
When is the first deadline?
I don't know, I was thinking about next Monday I'll start with the case study for the second one, the first article for the second topic, and then we can agree on like different dates for the case study and so on. So, but for the draft session and so on. We have still one weekend that I want to use full for the drafting and so on, and explaining case study and so on. But we need to be kind of drafting a bit this because we require like some check before you submit.
And Stefano, all answers are to be between 2,500
In total.
in total.
Not separate like question 1 or 2, A, B, C.
Sounds like question one.
Yeah, like we did in GBOS. You don't have introduction, you don't have conclusion, simply like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, that's it. References. Any questions? No? Can you do it?
Oh, we tried.
You try. So, onward, read the second one.